I'm Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. Today on the couch, I'm so excited to welcome author Lynn Painter to talk about her novel, Happily Never After. In Happily Never After, we meet bride-to-be Sophie Steinbeck, who finds out her fiancé Stuart has been unfaithful. She wants to call off the wedding, but for reasons you'll discover, she doesn't want to be the one to do it. She hires a professional wedding objector, so she doesn't have to get married. Now, the objector's name is Max Parks, and this is what he does for a living. He gets paid to object at weddings. Of course, he objects at Sophie's wedding. The wedding gets called off, but Sophie is intrigued by it all, and she asks Max to show her the ropes of the hired objection gig. But as they work together, their skepticism about love is challenged, and when they encounter a job involving Max's ex, it forces them to confront their true feelings about love and each other. But listeners, before we get into today's episode, pretty please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you listen to your favorite shows, leave me a 5-star rating, and write me a review if you love the show. Now, if you don't know what to write in your review, here's what you can do. Just give me 5 stars. That's a start. And in your review, tell me what episodes were your favorites and also what genres you'd like me to read and cover more here on the show. And again, if you leave me that 5-star rating and you write that review telling me what you want to hear more of, I have no choice but to try and make it happen. Alrighty, friends, thanks in advance. And now on to the episode with author Lynn Painter. Hi friends, welcome again to the Reader's Couch. I'm your host, Victoria Wood, and today to talk about her new novel, Happily Never After, is author Lynn Painter. Hi Lynn, welcome to the Reader's Couch.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here.
Yay! I can't wait to chat about your book. You had me hooked at the premise. But before we even get into it, how are you feeling? I know this isn't your first rodeo. You have quite a few books out there in the world, but how are you feeling about this one? How excited are you?
I am so excited. It's been really weird because I've been on deadline until I literally turned in a book a few days ago. So usually I have more time to stew and prep and stress about a book release, where now I just came out of a cave and I'm like, it's here, it's coming out next week. So I'm super excited.
Sounds like someone's shaking you and saying, it's here, it's time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, especially when you're so busy writing. But anywho, I would love listeners to hear from you first before we really start talking about the book. Tell us about Happily Never After. What's your elevator pitch? But also, what can readers expect when they pick up a copy?
The Happily Ever After is basically the story of Sophie. The book starts and it is her wedding day. She's getting married and she wanted to call the wedding off, but she doesn't want it to come back on her because of reasons. So a friend of the friend knows somebody you can pay to object at weddings. So it's her wedding. When they say, does anyone here know any reason why? A guy she doesn't know, but they've paid, stands up and says, I object, and lists off wonderful reasons that gets her off the hook without it being her fault. So after the wedding, she has drinks with her and her maid of honor have drinks with this objector man named Max, and they become friends laughing about it. And they're both kind of cynics about love. And as the story goes on, she decides to be his counterpart, to be his objectress, where they go around when necessary and are a team of wedding objectors, so to speak. So it's like strangers to friends to lovers. And then there's fake dating, and I'm not good at an elevator pitch, but that's the best I've got.
No, you did pretty good there. I love it. You did well. So let's get into the characters, shall we? So like you said, Sophie has this wedding. She, for reasons we're not going to say because we're trying to be very spoiler free here, but essentially a friend of a friend gets Max to object. So now she's gotten out of going through with the ceremony. But tell us a bit about Sophie, just so listeners can have an idea of what kind of person she is prior to going down the route of starting to object at weddings. Tell us about who she is, what's going on in her life, and everything up to the wedding.
Sophie absolutely doesn't believe in love. She thinks it's a social construct, and she believes that people are capable of having a partnership and making it work, but she thinks true love, it doesn't exist. So Sophie is into her career. She's successful, but she doesn't feel like she necessarily needs love. So she's not necessarily looking for a happily never. Now I can't even get the name of my book right. She's not looking for a happily ever after. So she's just focused on her career after her one attempt at a wedding.
And then we have Max, who is the person who got paid to object at Sophie's wedding. And like you said, after the ceremony, they get chatting, they hit it off, they become friends. But Max has a backstory of his own as well. So tell us about Max, who he is, what he has going on before he even got into wedding objecting as a profession.
Max isn't as bad as Sophie as far as he believes that love exists, but he's been hurt. So Max wants no part of it. So he almost sees the subjecting thing as altruistic. Like he only does it for people who are in a bad situation and potentially going to be marrying somebody who's a cheater or somebody who's basically a garbage human. So Max believes in love, but he's not looking for it at all.
That he isn't. And it's fair to say these two individuals, they're not really interested in a relationship themselves. They have their own baggage that they're carrying from their previous relationships, but they decide to be sidekicks in this wedding objecting business. Of course, we're going to see that there's a rift that ensues between the two. We're going to see if they can be able to sort things out and work through their differences. But we get to see their alternating point of views, which I think is something I really loved about this book. We got to hear from Sophie. We also got to hear from Max. And of course, there's a lovely supporting cast of characters. But I'm curious though, Lynn, where did your idea or inspiration come from to have a book centered around essentially people you can hire to object at your wedding if you don't want to go through with it?
This is one of those funny things where it's a random thought that my phone app, my notes app in my phone is full of just like little one-liner nonsensical things where I'm like, that could be something. And I can't remember if it was a movie or a TV show, but it got to the part of the wedding where the priest says, if anyone here knows of any reason these two should not be joined. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if you could pay somebody to object? And I put it in my notes app and forgot all about it. I thought about making it a book idea once and my agent said, I don't really like it. And it wasn't until I was like finished with the Love Wager and was thinking about what my next book idea would be that I started looking at it and I'm like, wait a second. Because at first I thought of it more as like a wedding crashers bro kind of an idea. This guy's going around destroying weddings. But I like started rethinking of as far as he's actually seeing himself as saving people from who are stuck entering into a bad marriage. So then it took on a life of its own and became an actual thing.
It became an actual thing indeed. I was thinking of, we're so accustomed to hiring people to be the best man, the maid of honor, to pretend to be the parents of the bride or the groom. But never did I ever think of, okay, we're going to just hire someone to object to get me out of this because I'm scared of the repercussions. So needless to say, you had me hooked at the initial premise. So I found that quite exciting. But I decided to go down a rabbit hole because I wanted to know, is this a thing? Do people really object at weddings? And I found this article. It was from BuzzFeed. The BuzzFeed editor was John Michael Poff, and they essentially crowdsourced stories from the internet on Reddit mostly of people listing objections they've witnessed at weddings. So before I share a couple with you, just to get your take on it, have you ever witnessed or heard of or know of a friend or a friend of a friend or just anyone who's had an objection at a wedding?
Okay. Yeah. I've never heard of it happening. And I honestly didn't know if it was even in most ceremony language anymore. So I am super excited to hear of actual objections that ever happened.
Okay, so the first one was fighting fathers, where the groom's dad interrupted the wedding. But this one is the ex's last stand. So the bride's ex objected and said he still loved her. They had become friends again after breaking up. And so far as anyone knew, his feelings for her were just platonic, especially given that he had broken up with her. But he got kicked out of the wedding and it continued, but it was pretty messed up and put a real damper on the day. Come on, an ex? Y'all are friends now, but they broke up with you and now they're objecting? Make it make sense.
That's wild.
I know. I don't get it. Another one is the undone objection. So this one, the groom himself stood up there and started crying, and in front of everyone told the bride that he had fallen out of love with her a while before, but had known how to break it off. Now, clearly he needed an objector. He should have just hired somebody. They both stepped out, but then came back 10 minutes later and got married because apparently she told him she was pregnant.
Oh my gosh!
I would not have gone through with it. I
No,
swear.
definitely not.
I'm like, sir. See, in this instance, I think he could have done with an objector.
Yes.
I'm just saying, don't get guilted. All right, divine intervention. So someone was saying that it was raining really badly. There was a loud clap of thunder. To his credit, the pastor just paused for a moment. Anyone else? And they started laughing, but they finished the ceremony. So I guess nature intervened right at that moment. And another one I saw was the screaming soulmate. So nobody had said speak now, by the way. They removed that from the ceremony. But the groom's ex still decided to get up and scream that he was her soulmate, that she forgave him for this whole thing, and they should just leave now because he'd proven his point. And I'm laughing, but he'd proven his point, which is by breaking up with her 5 years earlier, falling in love, and then holding the wedding. I'm like, I don't understand this one.
Okay, people should not invite their exes to their weddings, apparently.
No, but why do exes show up to weddings, like even if they weren't invited? I just,
Crazy.
Oi. And last one I'm going to share, the maid of dishonor. I went to a co-worker's wedding and the maid of honor objected and admitted to being the other woman, claiming that the groom had been cheating with her for months. The bride left in tears and the groom immediately tried to get with the maid of honor, but she told him she wasn't going to hurt the bride further and that he needed to just F off. I'm just like, oh my God.
Gosh.
The gall of this man. Again, people just hire a wedding objector. What do you think about these stories, though?
It's crazy. I don't know. I think it shows how many people maybe are getting married that shouldn't be.
I know. And maybe someone should start a wedding objector business, because by the sounds of it could be lucrative in present day. Yes, indeed. Okay, let's get back to your book, though. Who was your favorite character to write or discover in the story? And you can't say Sophie or Max.
Oh, I think it would have to be, oh my gosh. Yes, Larry, her roommate, was my favorite.
Okay, what about Larry stood out to you?
My favorite character to write was probably Larry. Honestly, I pictured him as Leslie Jordan, and it just went from there. Just the kind of unconventional roommate who absolutely says whatever he thinks, and half the time it's off the rails and completely unhinged. Mm-hmm. Had a lot of fun with him.
Oh, that's awesome. So I want to get into your writing life a little, because you've written so many books. You have the Better Than the Movies books. You have Mr. Wrong Number, The Love Wager, and then other standalones like Accidentally Amy, The Do-Over, which I loved, Betting on You, and of course now we have Happily Never After. How would you say your books are similar to, but also different from each other? And I should note that some of the books I shared are young adult books and some are adult books, but regardless, what are some of the similarities, but also what are some of the differences?
I feel like the similarities they're obviously all rom-coms. I'm a sucker for that. I need the happy ending, but I want it to be a fun little cringe-filled ride. So they all share that. And I guess they're all just different. It sounds very trite to be like, they're all different characters, but it's that whole like same girl, different font sort of a thing where they're all different characters and different stories but they come from the same place. They each are just their own character's story.
And that makes sense because we get to meet new people. I guess they're all related. Let's just say they're all family members, and one's from like the mom's side of the family and one's from the dad's side of the family. And we're just going to think of them as family members. But I'm curious about your decision to write both young adult and adult books. Tell us where you got started and what made you decide to transition between the two. Because I've seen where some authors will start with YA and then they move on to adult. They don't really come back to YA. You've given us the young adult books and the adult books, and then you'll go back and give us another young adult and so on. So tell me about the similarities and differences in writing between the two.
It's ironic the way it all played out, because when I was trying to get an agent and get things going in my career, I was writing adult and I wasn't having any luck. And then I read a John Green book and I was like, this space feels really comfortable. Like I feel like I could really write this voice. So then I wrote a YA book and that's what got me an agent. So then we sold better than the movies. So I was completely on the YA front. And then my agent just said to me, within your contract, you can't really write anything new in the young adult world for a while because of different clauses and whatnot. And she's like, maybe you should try writing an adult rom-com. And I was like, that's originally what I wanted to write. And so I wrote Mr. Wrong Number, and then we got a book deal on that. And now, honestly, I don't think I could choose. I love that I get to write them both because they both have so many things I love about them.
I think it's incredibly refreshing that you go between the genres. I think it's fun because, like I said, I'm so accustomed to getting the YA books, which I love the YA books, then getting the adult books, but then not getting any more. It's like school and now you've graduated. So I think it's incredibly refreshing. But on that note, you said earlier that you just turned in another book. So what books can we expect on the horizon? Obviously, after readers have read Happily Never After.
October 1st, I have the sequel to Better Than the Movies. Nothing Like the Movies comes out October 1st. So I just turned in the final version of that. So I'm super excited about that. It was really fun to get back in the world of Wes and Liz again.
So for listeners who are not familiar, just tell them briefly about Better Than the Movies, which was the first book, and then tell them what they can expect in Nothing Like the Movies.
Better Than the Movies is the story of Liz Buxbaum, a girl who's grown up watching and obsessed with rom-coms and just knows true love will come just like it does in the movies. So when her childhood crush moves back to town, she's convinced that's her meant to be. So she, of course, has to fake date her annoying next door neighbor in order to get into parties and be near this boy that she is convinced is her soulmate. And as in any rom-com, the person you fake date ends up becoming the person you maybe fall for. So that's the gist behind Better Than the Movies. And in Nothing Like the Movies, and at the end of Better Than the Movies, Wes and Liz, the two main characters, are going away to college at UCLA. So in Nothing Like the Movies, we learned that right after they got to UCLA, something happened in Wes's life where he had to go back home and they broke up. And so now it's 2 years later and Wes got everything back together and is back at UCLA. And now he needs to win Liz back.
Awesome. I'm really excited about that. And now we have that to look forward to in October. So listeners, if you're not familiar, Better Than the Movies, out now. There's also Better Than the Prom, Better Than Before. And of course, in October, Nothing Like the Movies. Are there any other adult books that you're working on right now?
Berkeley is re-releasing Accidentally Amy, which was indie pubbed last year. They will be re-releasing that in January.
Okay.
And so it's changed it, and now it's first person dual point of view, where when it came out, it was third person. So I'm really excited about that I got to add content and tweak it. So that will be the next adult book after Happily Never After.
Yay! It sounds really cool. You get to breathe new life into this book you already had. So I think that's exciting for listeners to know. But looking back, again, you have your YA books, you have your adult books. I'm excited to hear about the Accidentally Amy re-release. Looking back, if you could tell your younger writing self anything back when you were looking for that agent and writing the adult books and it didn't happen and you did YA instead, what would you tell her?
I would probably just tell her to set aside time to write. I look back and I had a house full of kids and a full-time job, and I wrote when I had time. So sometimes I would write for a few hours and then I might put it away for an entire week. And it wasn't until I started setting aside, like during my daughter's nap time, every single weekend, 2 hours on Saturday and 2 hours on Sunday, that's when things started to happen because I had that continuity in my writing. So I wish I could go back in time and just be like, make time.
Yes, yes. Similar to how I'm always telling listeners, make time to read. So if you're a writer, make time to write too. Okay, so I do want to get into your reading life because even though we're here to chat about Happily Never After and you were so gracious to talk about your other books too, we want to know what books you're reading. So share with our listeners the last book or books that you finished reading that you'd now recommend.
I just finished reading Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I'm not somebody who would usually read a book about a vampire and a werewolf, but anything Ali Hazelwood writes, I will read because she's so smart and so funny and it comes through in her characters. And I loved it. It was so good.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one too. What would you say was your favorite childhood book?
My favorite childhood books, I honestly think it's probably a toss-up between, I love Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because the imagery, like I can still picture how I pictured it in my head as a child. I also loved The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler was one of my favorites that I reread over and over again.
Oh, that is so exciting. I love my childhood self because I would just reread anything that I absolutely loved with zero care in the world. I think those are the best times.
Absolutely. Just total comfort read.
What books are you looking forward to reading in the year ahead, though?
I am really looking forward to in April, I think it's in March, The Love Remedy by Elizabeth Everett. It's historical romance, but it's a unique twist. She always writes science-y heroines. And this one is about an apothecary and like a private investigator. So even though it's set in Victorian England, it's a twist on the usual stories set in the like aristocracy. So I'm super excited. She's so good at writing historical fiction.
She is.
And I'm also excited about Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood because I just can't get enough of her books ever.
Ali is an author by author.
Like I try to not sound like I'm fangirling like crazy, but it's just, you can tell when an author is like so incredibly intelligent in real life that it's every single sentence is so smart and so funny that I just love it.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. So on the show, we love our authors, we fangirl over them. And I love hearing when authors fangirl over other authors too. So that's pretty cool. But we also love our indie bookstores. So share with our listeners some of your favorite indies.
I love my local indie is the Bookworm in Omaha. They're fantastic. They always let people, you can order any of my books personalized and signed, and they just call me and they're like, Lynn, you have some to sign. So I love them. I'm going to St. Louis next week for my launch at the Novel Neighbor. And that is just such a charming, wonderful indie. I love it.
Yay, that's so exciting. And I love hearing when indies support their authors, and that it's so cool that you just pop in and sign books.
Like Carl just calls me and he's like, hey, Lynn, you need to swing by. It's so nice.
Listeners, if you want a signed copy of a Lynn Painter book, now you know where to order it. So just give them a call. I'm sure they'll ship it for you. But bringing things back to your book, getting back to Happily Never After again, I had so much fun with this one. The premise was so intriguing to me. And I know you've done your job, you've written your book, but in an ideal world, what are you hoping readers might feel or think or just talk about after they've turned the last page?
Honestly, I think with all of my books, my goal is just a smile. Like I just want to write things that are hopeful and fun, like a comfort read, like an escapist read. I want you to finish one of my books and just be happy. That sounds very inane, but that's my goal, is just for it to be a fun ride. I think it's just because I personally am obsessed with rom-coms, and that's my favorite thing about them, to just, do the little sigh when you're done.
I had so much fun with this one. I ended up down a BuzzFeed rabbit hole, seeing if people really do object. But regardless, it was just a great escape for me. The world can be heavy and dark sometimes, so it's so fun. And I'm so grateful to have books like these that I can escape into. And Lynn, thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.